Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Franzgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You, Inc.
Today's topic is turning great ideas into smart impact. Podcast co-ops for smart entrepreneurs. Are you struggling to find your voice and connect with your audience? Our guest today is Carl Richards. With over 25 years of experience behind the mic on stage and on global platforms, Carl Richards knows how to captivate and influence. He, as a 3 times best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and host of the Speaking podcast, Carl has mastered the art of communication. He's also the founder and CEO of Podcast Solutions Made Simple, where he helps entrepreneurs launch standout podcasts and amplify their message, build authority, drive business growth. Ready to turn your ideas into a thriving, profitable podcast? Let Carl guide you to success. Carl, welcome back. And do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
Oh, it's a thrill to be here. Can my favorite quote be, "I'm blessed to be back on the show"? Is that? I would say one of my favorite quotes would be, and not that I'm a huge Star Wars fanatic or anything, but I would say one of my favorite quotes is "Do or do not. There is no try." And I think that's been very true with a lot of the clients that we've worked with over the last 4.5 years. Hard to believe it's been almost 5 years that we've been at this game. But then also just some of the things in my own business and personal life, I've recognized that when you actually do and don't just say, "I'll try," things shift.
Absolutely. Speaking of shifting, there's something new that's been happening in the Podcast Solutions Made Simple universe. And speaking of shifting, what's this co-op concept all about?
Let me give you a little bit of the backstory. One of the things that happened when we launched our business is we started to explore the barriers of entry for people wanting to come into the podcasting space but don't make it. I've talked in previous episodes about the 5 myths, for example. We've recognized that the 2 biggest barriers of entry are time and money. So with time, it's figuring out, how am I going to find the time to put a podcast together? You know, Bernie, you and Wayne do a great job with this show, but you have to admit, it does take some time and effort to consistently do the show every week. Congratulations on the success of the show. You guys have done a phenomenal job over the last 2.5, 3 years. But a lot of people say, "I don't know how I'm going to find the time to do this." So there's the time piece, but then there's the, okay, how much is this going to cost? What's the investment going to be for me? And as much as I can stand here and say it's a great investment for you, it's fantastic for your marketing, it's like writing a book to elevate your credibility, a lot of people will still say, it's just not in my budget. It's just not going to be something that is right for me. So we started thinking about those 2 barriers of entry, thinking, how can we simplify it for people so they can still come into the podcasting space, not necessarily dedicate that much more time, and maybe come in with a lower investment without it seeming like it's going to put a stronghold on us to lower our prices. That's the back end of it. We created this collaborative idea, which is basically, co-op is where you have more than one individual contributing content to an overarching show. So let's take the Knack for Business podcast, for example. If you wanted to expand it, Bernie, you could say, Wayne and I are still going to be the key hosts. And let's say the show is 30 minutes long. We're going to have a great conversation, invite guests in, have shorter conversations with them. But then we're also going to have other content contributors funnel in content every single month. So let's say you had 4 individuals that agreed to be on the Knack for Business podcast every single month, contributing content, say once a month. You might charge them a few $100s to allow them to be on your show. What ends up happening, though, is not only are they part of a show, but they're only dedicating the time that they need to record their content. Let's say they're adding a 10-minute piece to your show. How long does it take to record 10 minutes? Maybe an hour by the time you put together some ideas and hit record. And then there's the marketing piece. Now it's not only Bernie and Wayne promoting the show, it's Bernie and Wayne and all of their co-op partners promoting the show as well. So that's how we came up with the idea. It's a lower barrier of entry. It really makes it easy for people to come in, get their content out there, not have to find that extra 10, 15, 20 hours in their month to do it, but then also keeps the investment low so they can at least get their feet wet with podcasting. And then at some point down the line, they might choose branch off and do their own show. but at least they've gotten started in the podcasting space. Whereas with the original model where a lot of people do their own shows, you're working in a silo. This allows people to collaborate and put some content out there.
Sounds like a conversation you and I had 2 years ago, Carl.
Oh, we've had many conversations over the years. I think that's just one of them for sure.
So, in the overall process, are you establishing the co-op and providing that space where people become a member of Podcast Solutions Made Simple? And then the co-op fosters this. If someone has the strength and delivery consistency piece, and the other person is going, I want to stick my toe in the water, but I don't want to go for a full swim. Is that how you're establishing this then?
That's a very good question, Bernie. With any co-op, the way we're envisioning it, and anything is open to change. Change is constant. What we're envisioning, though, is there will be a lead within each co-ops. And let's say it's a wellness co-op. Let's just take that as an example. Or actually, we could take the Knack for Business podcast as an example. You and Wayne would be the leads on the show, or you have an existing show. So you would be in charge of managing the co-op and deciding who comes into the co-op or figuring that piece out. Now, we can support you if we feel that we have an individual who will be great for your co-op or your collaborative show. We might suggest them to you. At the end of the day, the lead needs to think, are they a right fit for what this co-op should achieve? Because it's a co-op, everyone we think has a vested interest in the discussion and the conversation. But I think that someone definitely needs to be a lead. Our goal is to set up 4 podcasts and 4 co-ops this calendar year. We don't want to be the lead on 4 co-ops and then 4 more the following year. We want to be able to provide the platform and have the folks within the co-op basically run the co-op, and we provide full back-end support with what we do at Podcast Solutions Made Simple, all the editing, the artwork, the music, all of that stuff. The other piece would be constant support. This works well within organizations. We've worked with a client in Germany, and they work a lot with organizations who have a number of employees or different partners. That's where a co-op really makes sense, or individuals who are currently working in silos that don't mind partnering with other people with similar interests. There are many different themes that a co-op can be. You can have a co-op that's all about wellness. So everyone contributing content to that collaborative podcast will be contributing something about wellness. Someone might want to do something about diet. Someone might want to do something about exercise. Somebody else might want to be talking about sleep, mental wellness. So there's many different pieces of it, but at the end of the day, they're all contributing to that larger piece of the pie.
The podcast is a marketing outreach, no question.
Yeah.
I'll even say subject matter expert just because we have to.
Okay.
Having said that, this wellness podcast becomes its own selling proposition. It becomes its own SKU.
Yep.
How do you market a SKU so that the product becomes more known?
How this works from a marketing perspective is, rather than just Wayne and Bernie marketing the XYZ wellness show, you have Wayne and Bernie and any number of other collaborative partners who are part of the marketing solution. So you're marketing it in your network, and so are the other partners.
So you have another expert that comes in and be part of this co-op program, and the cost is $200. Is that just to cover the cost for the podcast production and the push, or is there something else? What are the expectations around that $200 if it's $200?
Okay, so your investment is definitely in the way it works is any one of our packages you can fit a co-op into, right? So if your investment dollars allow for a $36,000 co-op, anyone who's funneling their investment into the co-op means they're a part of a podcast, which is a marketing tool. It's covering all of the editing, the back-end work, audiograms, video clips, reels, and things like that. The marketing piece itself becomes the responsibility of the individual people within the co-op. So I have a network, Bernie has a network, Tony Jennis has a network, we all have networks. We're all going to be promoting the fact that this is our show. So we're not creating a marketing plan or a marketing strategy. We will strategize probably more than we usually do because the individual partners will need to know how to get the word out. Another way I can frame it, one of the nice things about a co-op Wayne, and Bernie for that matter, is it's a collaborative effort. Everything about it is a collaborative effort. Even though you have a lead on it, you still have a collaboration. So everyone's funneling their piece of content. That's the investment, much like you would have. Here's a really good example. You've heard of these partnerships where people will co-author a book together. You might have 10, 15, 20 authors contributing their content for a book, maybe that one chapter. So their investment is to be in that book. An individual investment for the co-op is to be on this podcast sharing your content. It's a pay-to-play model. You get the back-end support, editing, you get the production, you get the artwork, you get all of those things. You do get some marketing strategy. We work with people to help do that anyways. But the other thing that you get is you get the support of the other people within the co-op, as well as your own people who will be promoting the show. So when I say that podcasting is its own marketing tool, yes, that's true. But you now have all these other marketing engines, the people within the co-op who are sharing the show through their networks while you're also doing the same thing, which builds your audience, credibility, reputation, and ultimately builds business because you're all sharing in this together. That's what I think is different about it, as opposed to individual podcasts that tend to work in a silo where it's all about me and what I do. It's okay, we're all part of this together, like multiple authors in a book. We're all going to share in the building of the content. We're going to share in the success of how that podcast comes together and grows as we continue to pump out content.
Two things pop up in my head as you describe that process, and it sounds like a good game plan. Wayne and I have been doing this. We're well over 250 podcasts recorded. If I think back to podcast 1 and 2, it's not that we were shaky. We, under your guidance and tutelage, Carl, we shaped ourselves in a good thing. But I think over the last 2.5 years, though, we've morphed just au naturel, right? Wayne knows now at this point in time, Bernie stops, gives him the look, or sends a note. We were reading signals from each other. There's a harmonization that happens. So when you're having a co-op, do you anticipate that harmonization piece to happen pretty quickly? Or is it literally, here's Wayne and Bertie talking, and then you have this other person coming in and they plug in? How do you see that framework happening? Are there different models of that? Bernie and Wayne talk to somebody for a bit, and then we have Carl come in, and Carl goes, hey, subject change.
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you shared that with podcasting. There are no rules. There's no set format. Here's how podcasting is done. I attune a co-op similar to those magazine style shows we've seen on television and radio over the years, where you have an overarching host, and then you have those content contributors. To answer your question, Bernie, it could start out with you and Wayne doing what you typically do. It might be a shorter piece, maybe not. We try to plan it around being a 30-minute show, but it can be as long as you want it to be. That's a semantic you can decide as the leads or even as a collaborative for how many people you want contributing weekly or monthly. But let's say you and Wayne are doing the overarching introduction. Hey, welcome to the Knack for Business podcast. It's a collaboration of thought leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs. We're so glad you're here with us today. Wayne and Bernie do their thing. And then they say, now let's hear from Carl Richards, one of our regular contributors. He's going to talk about a brand new product in the podcasting space. Boom. You throw it to me, so to speak. And when I say throw to, there is no throw to. I've already sent you my 10 minutes of content. Maybe I've already even edited it for you to make your life easier. So you just plop it in there and you go, oh, there's my piece. And then you and Bernie can come off, if you want. You and Wayne can come off the mics and say, hey, thanks, Carl. That was fantastic information. Wayne, what did you think? Wayne, then you can say, okay, great. Let's hear from Tony. Tony is one of our colleagues in our space. He's going to share something inspirational, and then you're on to the next thing. You can structure it that way. You can have everybody in the room together. I think everybody in the room together or on a Zoom together is a little bit more complicated with various time zones. But if you structure it where you guys take the lead and plug in the other sections as necessary, I think it makes for an interesting, smooth delivery, and you don't necessarily have to have every single piece figured out. 60 Minutes is a good example. Andy Rooney would always do his little piece, and everyone would say, here's Andy Rooney with his quirky thing. You didn't necessarily know what Andy Rooney was going to be talking about that week, but he had his 10 minutes or whatever it was time to cover that piece. There's an example of how it can work for podcast co-op contributors sharing their content. You guys having the opportunity to feature them and take advantage of their expertise, but then also them having the opportunity to be a part of a larger collaborative.
I love the concept of podcasts being monetized. We all hear Carl Rogan and a couple of those, and it doesn't really fit to most of us. But how does this collegial environment attract advertisers better than silos?
Sure. I'm glad you said that, Wayne. I really want to change your mind about monetization and sponsors and dollars, because podcasting is a different entity. If we try and make a collaborative or a co-op, if we try and pilot sponsorship dollars or advertising into it the way we've done with radio and television and print, it's going to take a lot of effort to do that. The collaboration piece itself allows us to do things like build communities, have bonus content, have external events, going beyond the podcast itself and thinking creatively, how do we bring in more awareness or attention to what we do and monetize that, instead of how do we get another person or another entity in to sponsor us, like a bank or a think tank. One of the nice things about a co-op is you never know when you might come across somebody who wants to be a silent partner or play a smaller role. They might want to have, instead of their 10 minutes of fame once a month, they might say, you know what, I am super busy. I don't have the time, but I do have some dollars. Mention my name. And you know what, once a month, I wouldn't mind having a 2-minute segment where I give my 2 minutes of inspiration or my message. That's all I'm asking for. And I'm going to throw a boatload of money your way and be your silent partner. I want to be a part of this co-op, this think tank, this synergy that you guys are creating.
I'm with people here that I've been working with years, so they'll both enjoy it. It's a bit of an inside baseball, but the whole idea of Wayne as a silent partner in itself is hilarious.
Wayne would never be a silent partner. In a podcast co-op, he'd be an active contributor, if not every week, then certainly on a monthly basis with all of the great things that you do, Wayne. So thank you for sharing that.
My dream is booth babes on Princess Street in a tent, handing out Carl Radio hoodies.
There's some visuals. And by the way, folks, if you're trying to figure out where that is, that would be in Kingston, Ontario. So, Carl, the co-op, the overall structure is we have a really high view. And if we were to come down to the weed level,
Sure.
because everybody's going to have it, like you said, there are rules, but there are no rules, right? If you're going to talk about certain subjects, that's going to put you in certain boxes, either for the listeners or even how the podcasts treat you. So if you have stuff that is mature content, not for kids, there'd be a rating. If you talk about, say, alcohol, it pushes you around. That all said, so there's a whole bunch of variables that kick in, even the format, how you doing the recording, are you using this one platform, etc. And if you're the source code, like in this case, Knack for Business would be a source code if we're co-oping with someone else, because we're doing it. We already have a lot of traction and we already have an existing format. How do you foresee the interconnection with people, even if they're starting out? So listen, I want to rock this boat and I want to make it happen. And I got the go. How do you help them structure that shape so that they have some sort of shape? It's going to evolve, obviously, but structure that so that here's format 1, 2, or 3, whatever the case might be.
That's a very good question. Even though there are no rules, we've come up with some guidelines that make it easier for people. We're happy to sit down with an individual and share an idea for a concept. Most people who are thinking of taking the lead already have an idea of the overarching theme. Let's pick one. Wayne, so Bernie, I know that you're definitely familiar with, and Wayne, I'm sure you have some insights as well. Let's say you're going to take the lead on a real estate podcast. You might not be the only expert. If I'm going to do a real estate co-op podcast, I need to have an investor. So I need an investor on my show. Who do I know who's an investor? I think you probably know someone. Who do I know who is a lawyer, a real estate lawyer, who would make for a great person on my show? Who do I know who is a lender or has some advice in that area? Who's a land developer? So I would say, let's make that list. And then you can figure out, is your co-op going to be you and 4 other people? Is your co-op going to be you and 8 other people? Mathematically, if you have yourself and 2 other people in each episode. There is some structure, and we can certainly help you figure that out. We can also help you figure out, okay, how is this going to work out dollar-wise? And is there room for, or should we be looking at a silent partner? There are no rules within the podcasting space. And because we're thinking of this as a magazine style show, several authors in a book, we already know with several authors in a book, there's usually a foreword or a part that is contributed by somebody else than the individual chapters. So what for a podcast co-op would be different? Will there be somebody who every week or once a month has their inspirational quote of the month? Or if they're talking about what's the word of the week, who is supporting or sponsoring the listener feedback, or what sometimes gets called the mailbag, old terms of when snail mail was read on the air for radio and television. So there's many different ways that you can structure it, and we can certainly help you do that. But I think the first thing is to think about, what would my co-op be about, or what type of co-op would I like to be a part of? How do I see myself contributing? Am I taking the lead, or am I the person that's maybe piloting in that 10 minutes of content every month? And then who else do I know that might be a great candidate for a co-op with me?
Something that I think is a really amazing opportunity to have somebody like you on the show is people can record raw data. Let's say in an iPhone. They record their half an hour of babble on whatever topic they want. But most people don't know, and I'm with two people here that do know, how much it takes to turn that into a show. There's pre-roll, there's intros, there's extras, there may be music. Tell me about timelines and how you craft something from raw voice into a show.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to that for sure. How we do it, I can't give you all of my secrets, Wayne, not today. But certainly we have a team that does all of that. We have a team that, for example, works on the original music. We call it sonic branding. They work on that. They do nothing but work on sonic branding. By the way, Bernie, I'll just quickly mention, sonic branding is, we all know what a brand looks like: fonts, logos, colors. But what does your co-op sound like? That's one of the things we do, help people figure out, not just for co-ops, but for a regular podcast. What is your business, or what is your brand, or what does your co-op sound like? All the back-end editing, definitely something that does take time. But it's a matter of, we want to make sure that when we're putting something out there, it's not only the best version of you, but it's something that we want to put our stamp on. We want to be proud and say, hey, yes, we support Wayne and Bernie, Knack for Business podcast, or podcast co-op, and here's how we make it look and sound good. But then there's the visual too. There's the artwork, the promotional tools, the audiograms, the reels, the shorts, all of those things that we create in the background. So there's a many-step process that is too complicated to put into a simple metric to explain on this show, because there's a lot of moving parts that I don't even know what my production team does half the time. I know they do it, I just don't know everything they do to make everything look and sound good. There are a lot of moving parts. If you've ever been behind the scenes, back in the old, taking a tour of a radio station or a television station, and see how things happen behind the scenes, that's not how things happen when you're hearing or watching. So there's many things behind the scenes that you don't need to know. You just need to know it's being taken care of, and that it's being done properly, and that it's worthy of your investment, especially if you're looking at, I want to throw my money at something for marketing. Does a co-op make sense? I'm going to say yes, because you're going to get that full support from an agency like ours that's always going to have your back and make sure that the best version of you is always going forward.
Have you written or are going to write a white paper so that people can talk amongst themselves and get back to you with answering those questions, so that they've got some education when they sit down with you?
Yeah, sure. We're definitely think tanking. We do have documentation available now. The one thing that we don't have at the recording of this episode, that hopefully by the time it goes live, we will have, is a working model. So when I start talking about co-op, we can actually share, here's what it looks and sounds like. So as opposed to just having it on paper, you actually can see a practical working model of what a co-op can look and sound like. When I share with people about this concept of a collaborative partnership with other colleagues or thought leaders in your industry, people get excited when they hear the word co-op and working together with others. I think we're at a time where Business silos are coming down. We want to partner with other people, not just to benefit ourselves, but to help other people grow and flourish as well, or to get the word out about our passion projects. We want to have success or help in that success journey. When I share this with people, get excited about it because they go, okay, I can have a podcast. I can play in the podcasting space and I don't have to do it alone. I don't have to go it along and pray that I'm making the right decisions every step of the way with content and promotion. So that's what some of the benefits is. You're not only participating in a co-op, but you're also think tanking and masterminding together. One of our recommendations will be, and again, this is still in its infancy stages, we're thinking that you should probably be having regular co-op masterminds for yourself, just to talk about the content that you're going to create for the next month. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's something that's on your mind that you think you want to share over the next 6 months that will bring a lot of impact to the co-op and our listening audience?
Well, you've just described a couple of layers of activity here. One, it's the iceberg model. On the top, there's a lot underneath that makes it happen. And
yeah,
I think part of that journey, even when you're formulating how should we shift this, the other layer you don't see is you have to build out a bit of a strategy. So if you're having a mastermind, or even when you're doing a co-op podcast, depending on how you structure it. In other words, you do the intro, someone does a 10-minute talk, and then you talk about the 10-minute talk. It's almost like having a panel coming in, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. To make this stuff flow and provide consistency as much as possible when you're bringing this together, especially if you're doing production, post-recording, what are the basics that you have to have for a kit? Because we'll use visuals. Like right now, I'm looking at the setup as I'm doing the recording. My primary is audio, but I'm also working on the visuals. And if it goes really well, I'll put it on YouTube and I'll use the audiogram. It'll have a visual part of it too, right? So I'll have that crafted. What are the basic things you want to have established other than the desire and the topic?
Yeah. Desire and topic are great. I think this goes back to basics. What are some of the basic tools you need? Obviously, you need a computer because people are pressed for time. One of the things I'm noticing is a huge uptick in studios being created in various parts of the world. Podcasts are global, so wherever you're listening, there might not be a studio in your spot, but I know for a fact there are several being created in the Toronto area. I'm in Canada, as are you guys. I know there's a couple in Kingston, in the Ottawa area. You can go into that studio, rent an hour of studio time, and record, have your piece recorded there, and then pass it on. That certainly makes it easier. And by the way, studio time for an hour, it's going to vary depending on where you are. I've heard people charging as low as $50 an hour. So it's not a huge barrier for people who do not have the space or they don't want to invest in equipment. If you are looking at really having a quiet space to record and do some great content, you need a minimum, you need a microphone, you probably need a webcam. We're at a time where we're going to see more video podcasts. We can't dismiss audio, which is why you still need a really good microphone. It doesn't have to be like thousands of dollars, but certainly around that $100, $150 mark is a good entry level. Some decent lighting and a quiet spot to do that. Those are the basics. And I think because you're working on this co-op piece together, if you are stuck for ideas for content, we're there to help you. You'll probably have people within your co-op who will say, oh, you're contributing this. Here are some ideas that come to my mind immediately. If you guys have been in networking groups or masterminds where somebody in the room says, I don't know where to start, there's usually one or two people who will chime in and say, that starts those creative juices flowing. So the minimum from an equipment standpoint are microphone, a decent webcam. You don't have to spend a ton of money on it, some decent lighting, and a desire. You can rent a studio if you'd rather go that route, and be open to generating some ideas or bringing your existing content, your intellectual property forward in smaller, shorter, bite-sized pieces, that 7 to 10 minutes, so that you can be a part of that. I hope that answers the question you were jiving at.
I think your collegial space is just sheer brilliance. Tell me about what 2026 looks like.
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared that, because I think we're in a space where there is an evolution in the podcasting space. Not only are we seeing more videos pop up, but I think we're seeing more collaboration. We don't necessarily see it set up as a co-op model, but we're seeing co-hosts coming together, or 2 or 3 people or 4 people who are in mastermind groups coming together and doing a podcast. So we're already seeing it. We're not seeing this particular model, because when I mention it to people, even people who are actively listening to podcasts all the time, they say, as simple as this sounds, I don't see it. I don't hear it anywhere in any of the other shows I'm listening to. We hear co-hosts, we hear roundtable discussions or panels, but not the co-op model. So what I see is more content like this. I'd like to think I'm the trailblazer and catalyst that will have it moving forward. Our goal is to launch 4 podcast co-ops this year. We're more than open to launching more if there's a desire, if there's a need in the market for it. When that's successful, then we'll make a decision as to how many next year we want to launch. Do we want to stick with 4, or do we want to up it to 6 or 8, or even maybe 1 co-op per month, which sounds very ambitious, but when ideas start to flow and you have all these people partnering together, guess what? Magic happens, and the magic is get enough people together with an idea. That's where change really starts to happen. I see this type of content creation and content sharing or collaboration really starting to take more of the lead in the podcasting space as silos come down a little bit, as we already are doing more partnership together.
In order to hit the ground running, how much should they put together to get into the meat of a launch? How much money should they put in?
You personally, Wayne, would be the founding father of a podcast co-op. I think you should be looking at it because there is a ton of support that you're going to get on the back end. Our package is $9,000 up to $20,000. That's the total, with a boatload of support built in. So you should be looking at, okay, if I'm somewhere in the middle, somewhere around that $15,000 mark, how many people do I need in that co-op to make it happen? And by the way, we've already run some of the numbers for that, whether it's a 4-person co-op with a lead, whether it's an 8-person co-op with a lead, whether it's a 4-person co-op with a lead and a silent partner. So we've already run some of those scenarios to know, here's the total, here's what we need, here's what the launch is worth, and then here's what the investment will be every month after that. And when you break it down, you can get that investment, because we're talking audio and video now, not just the audio platforms. You can get it to as low as $500 a month for a co-op, for a person to contribute every month. When you're talking to people who are already subject matter experts or thought leaders, say your investment for your marketing budget into a podcast co-op is $6,000 this year. Most people will say, is that all? Can I really invest that much more? Because I'd like to, because that doesn't sound like it's enough. So that's the nuts and bolts of that. But definitely there's an entry point. But when you do start to break it down, depending on the number of people you have in your co-op, we've already talked to individuals who are thinking of having a 12-person co-op with a lead, where their show would be, instead of it being a 30-minute show, it's going to be a 40-minute show. So a co-op can take many different forms. How many people do you want to work with? How many people do you think are going to be a part of this? It works very well with networking groups, because one of the things that networking groups do well is networking, but promotion and marketing is a piece that falls by the wayside. Co-op is a great model for individual members within a networking organization or group to promote what they do and have an overarching host sharing about what the collaborative or networking group is doing this month, this week.
If a person says, yes, I get that, I want that, how do we get a hold of you?
I am quite often bribed by beverages, but in all seriousness, I say that because both Wayne and Bernie and I have spent a lot of time together breaking bread and clanking glasses. Your professionalism and the opportunity to be on the show, I appreciate the support and the ability to think tank stuff over an adult beverage or meal. Best way to get a hold of me is podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com. You can also get a hold of Bernie and Wayne. I get the feeling that both of you are sitting up and going, I wonder if I should take Knack for Business and turn it into a co-op. Is there an opportunity there? Bernie and Wayne are 2 great individuals who can connect us up too, but Carl, podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com, best way to get a hold of me for sure.
I want to say thank you to Carl Richards, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the listeners. Do you have a podcast question? Do you want to be in that space? Do you want to know how to be in that space? You want to be a part of a co-op? Reach out to Carl.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motivateyou.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8, and the letter u.ca, or his website, motivateyou.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from At High, a co-working space that is more than just a space; then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.